What is going on, guys? It's the Mad Dragon. So the teams have now been announced for week 2 of the July internationals between England and Australia. Now, last week's game was an awful lot of fun to watch as someone who's like a third party, not really supporting either team, just to see how it gets on. But I can imagine if you're an England fan, that was a hard game to watch. And if you're an Australia fan, you must have felt really overjoyed at the performance put in by a 14-man Australian team. For so much of that game, we managed to just about see out for a lovely win. England making a late comeback in that game to draw the scoreline, much more friendlier than it could have been about 5 minutes previous. We did do a match report that we'll check on screen for you guys. It is on the channel. You can go back and watch it if you want a bit more of an in-depth look at that game. But certainly a lot of areas to work on for both teams. But yeah, England will be a little bit disheartened by that last game. A little bit resembling of their game versus the Barbarians, where they knocked down the opponents to 14 men and just could not capitalise for the rest of the game, and not managing to just see out what realistically in the world of international rugby you expect when one team has a red card for over a half a game. You expect them to probably be coming away with a win, but Australia not being put down. So moving into this week then, we want to check out the teams that have been announced. Starting off with the Australia team. Starting out in the front row then, Angus Bell, David Porecki and Taniela Tupou. So Porecki had a good game last week, actually. An awful lot of ball carrying from a hooker. It's nice to be seeing. But yeah, absolutely involved in an awful lot of it. I'm trying to think back to the Australia versus England scrums. I can't remember one team being way more dominant. Obviously, they lost their man due to the red card. So I'd imagine England probably had the advantage. I cannot remember off the top of my head. I probably should have gone back and watched my own video and could have told me a little bit more. But, you know, there's some heavy weights. People like Taniela Tupou are big boys. So, you know, there's an awful lot of weight in this front row. So I'm sure they'll be wanting to give it a good crack when you get around to the scrummaging and driving maul situations. In the lock department, Matt Phillips and Caroline Neville. Now, of course, Darcy Wayne getting his red card last week. I'm not sure how it impacts July internationals, whether that means they miss a game because you got red carded or you have your ban for a certain number of games being missed. So it could well be due to that, or could well because he got a card they avoid him from the team. Not 100% sure, but hopefully they can just get back on top now. Now Philip did come on and actually had quite a good game, but of course being down in that lock department, I expected England to really begin to open Australia up in terms of the line-out, so we didn't really see it. It didn't really get going like that. So Australia will be happy with their performance. So hopefully if they can avoid the red cards this week, they can be even better in that situation. In the back row then, Rob Leota, Michael Hooper and Rob Valentini. Is this the same three we saw last week? It could well have been Michael Hooper retaining that captaincy. Had a great game. Have you ever seen him have a bad game, to be honest? But last game, some fantastic tackles right on the 5 metre line, getting himself in mauls, literally holding the ball up, doing absolutely fantastically. I don't feel like we've got to really see that much from Valentini in terms of running with the ball in hand. I would have liked to see them hold on to the ball just that little bit more. In the halfback partnership, Nick White and Lola Seo. Now, Lola Seo had to come in very late replacement because Quade Cooper got injured in the warm-up before the last game. Now, Lolosio, he didn't actually do too bad towards kicking to post, actually, but the general running play, I tend to prefer other fly halves over Lolosio, so we'll have to see how he gets on. Nick White does everything that Nick White does. We know what he does in most games. Plays pretty similarly in every game, always likes to be in the middle of things. In the centre partnership, Karevi and Hunter Paisami. Yep, this was a setting that's going to work quite well now. Now, Karevi was everywhere last week, was kicking the ball an awful lot himself, which you're not really used to seeing from number 12s in a lot of teams. So, you know, nice to see, but good ball carrying as well. It was taking 2 men to tackle him. It was really opening up. A couple of tries came from the beginning of Karevi breaking the line, so nice to see him still in here. And then finally the back three, Coriobetti, Tom Wright coming in on the right wing, and then Jordan Pataya falls to fullback. Now, no Andrew Kellaway. Not sure, that could be an injury, that could just be mixing up the team a bit. Now, Andrew Kellaway, I thought actually did quite well last week, he's had to move backwards from playing on the wing, moved to that fullback position, and Pataya went on the right wing. And Pataya got himself over for a try. It was a lovely try, just smashing through players. So, be interesting to see how he gets on there. Of course, Tom Banks, unfortunately, I doubt we're going back to see Tom Banks. I haven't actually followed up on his injury. I imagine there's a broken arm in there, so we probably won't be seeing him. But Tom Wright, good opportunity for him to make some waves. In terms of the replacements then, we've got Falau Fainga, who got on very well. Got himself over for a try as well last week. Nice to see. Scott Seo, James Slipper, Nick Frost going to be making his debut at some point. Pete Samu, another one who got himself over for a try last week. Jake Gordon, James O'Connor, and Isaiah Parise. Now, James O'Connor, in all honesty, I think I might prefer James O'Connor over Lolosio in terms of that fly half. I'm sure some Australian subscribers can inform me if I'm completely wrong. But from the games I've seen from James O'Connor, I think I actually prefer, in terms of the running play, over Lolosio. I might have made that switch out there. Pete Samu made nice impact from the bench. I don't know if I'd be starting him, but in terms of bench players coming on, very, very useful. Yeah, I think this is a nice setup here. They've not changed around too much. This is quite a similar team that we've seen. A couple of switches out here and there, and one new debutant going to be making his way onto the pitch. So quite nice. But yeah, I think, again, sort of like we saw with the New Zealand video, for anyone who wasn't seeing that preview already, it's a bit more of a, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. They'll just want to... They'll be annoyed at the end of last game to have let in those final 2 tries that England scored. The scoreline would have looked way more in favour, and with a 14-man team as well, they would have felt very, very proud of that game. They'll just want to cut down on letting through England on that defensive. It might be that the 14-man just eventually tired them out enough to open up the room for England to get through, but they were some good tries. So I think just nailing that defence down a bit, keep doing what they're doing, work on those set pieces a bit. Neither team really took over in the line-outs last week, and it was one of the areas where I really thought England were going to be key. They didn't manage it, but then Australia didn't necessarily actually dominate it themselves. It was just neither team really sort of competed at each other's lineouts. So that would be the main area I'd want to be seeing from Australia this week, especially with 2 locks, hopefully for the whole game. We can hopefully keep them on. But I think overall, it's a pretty good Australia team. Moving on to the England team then. Now, they'll be a little bit unhappy with how that game went. A couple of really nice moves from the new debutant boys right at the end of the last game actually sort of salvaged some reputability in that game. They'll be really unhappy to have not won against a 14-man team for so long. A couple of yellow cards for themselves there. Johnny Hill got a yellow card last week. Billy Vunipola getting a yellow card. A couple of real tries that came in from Australia that England won't have been happy. They really didn't defend it well enough. So they'll be looking to try and improve this week. In terms of kicking as well, kicking duties wasn't necessarily the best. We've seen it now in the Barbarians game. Marcus Smith kicking, not really on point. Last week, Owen Farrell missed some kicks as well. You know, if he got all his kicks, they still would have won the game. I'm not saying they would have maybe had that big comeback that they did right at the end, but, you know, little things like that make a game in a test series like this. They can come down to just one score. You've got to be nailing those kicks 100% of the time. So in terms of the England team then, I think it's only one switch out this week in terms of the forwards. We've got Ellis Genge, Jamie George and Will Stewart in that front row, Maro Itoje and Johnny Hill in the lock department. And then in the back row, Courtney Lawes taking over the captaincy now. Sam Underhill moves in at 7 and Billy Vunipola retaining that number 8 shirt. Now, I do believe Tom Curry in one of the impacts in that game actually came down with a concussion. I can't remember if he came off in the game. I feel like he stayed on for a lot of the game, but did get ruled out through concussion, so not going to be playing. They've got concussion safety laws, can't play this one. So Sam Underhill's moving into that 7 shirt. Captaincy moves to Courtney Lawes, you know, or it might have even been captain last week. I always think Tom Curry's now the captain. I actually think Courtney Lawes might have been captain last week as well. So, you know, there's a big switch up there, but Sam Underhill's still a good player to bring on. Was quite quiet in that Barbarians game, so hopefully we'll be making more of an impact here. It's a good front 8. You know, it's the same pretty much front 8 that we saw last week. Again, Maro Itoje and Johnny Hill not really dominating the line. I think Johnny Hill did better in the line-out, actually. For everything that I sort of give more praise towards Itoje than Johnny Hill when it comes to this England lock department. I actually think Johnny Hill might have outshined in that line-out position there. Yeah, just again, discipline, penalties. The scrum certainly went down a couple of times they won't have been too happy about. So just need to settle their game in terms of the forwards and allow the backs to do what they do. Moving on to the backs then. In the halfback partnership, Jack van Poortvliet and Marcus Smith. I'm going to try and get that lad's name a little bit more bang on as the series gets on. We've only seen him for about 30 seconds of the game. Managed to get himself a try. Nice to see. Looking forward to see a bit more game time. Don't really know a lot about the lad. Marcus Smith still retaining that 10 position. Owen Farrell and Guy Porter are going to move into this centre partnership now. So they're still trying this 10-12 with Marcus Smith and Owen Farrell. I didn't really notice them stepping on each other's toes too much, to be honest. But at the same time, I wasn't really seeing it be what you want from that England team. The two set playmakers moving on either side of round a ruck wasn't really getting there. Guy Porter, someone I don't know a lot about, so we'll be keeping a bit of an eye out for him. The centre partnership in that England team, not necessarily firing on all cylinders. It's a bit tricky when you've got Owen Farrell moving from being a fly half to that 12. He likes to sort of run the game. Sometimes it doesn't help an outside centre move around a bit more. You have to play off of Owen Farrell a bit. So hopefully they can gel well together. I still don't think that 13 shirt is nailed on for England at this point. And then in the back 3, Tommy Freeman comes in on the left wing, Jack Nowell on the right wing, and Freddie Stewart retains that fullback position. Now, Tommy Freeman has been one of the lads that I've been told to keep an eye on, so I'll be trying to keep a special eye just to see his impact on the game. Freddie Stewart, a lot of kicks going to Freddie Stewart last week. Not really any chasers chasing after him. Freddie Stewart took them all day long. The counter running didn't really get quite how we wanted to see. We've seen him in the Six Nations with some of the counter running, making really good ground. Didn't really make as much ground in terms of the counter run last week. There was an awful lot of kicking tennis, but yeah, absolutely unchallenged in the air. So looking pretty good. So some switch-ups in this back line. Obviously, the back line wasn't really utilised to its full ability last week, so hopefully Eddie Jones has got some correct calls here. And then finally on to the finishers. Luke Cowan-Dickey will be going on in that second half alongside Mako Vunipola and Joe Hayes, who I'm really looking forward to see a bit from. Ollie Chesham and Lewis Ludlam going to be coming on in that second half as well. Now, Lewis Ludlam actually was quite impressive when he came on for the bench last week. I was quite surprised. I've never rated him particularly highly, but was one of the few players last week, I would say, in this England team that made an actual impact in terms of the breakdown situation, in terms of those forwards moving. He was the most impressive too when he came on, so nice to see there. And then I've only just realised actually Jack Willis is actually the 21 shirt. So England are going for the 6-2 split this week. They obviously believe that the Australian forwards is where the issue was, and England forwards getting tired later on in that game. I'm not sure if that's necessarily the correct move there. I don't believe Australia were really beginning to dominate. I get it, my own memory now fading me a little bit now. But I really feel the thing that was carving England apart, as we did right when the Australian team was announced, I was saying they just need to use the backs. Karevi, Corriabetti, let these lads through. Let them go out wide. And I really think a lot of the main movement up the field coming from Australia was the backs moving in. So unless they're just trying to bolster the forwards in terms of a defensive rate, I'm not sure whether this is going to be the right call here. Obviously, this is going to mean an England game plan change. Now, last week, their game plan sort of fell apart a little bit. So obviously, they're going to try and switch it up this week. This is more showing the cards of what England are doing rather than a reaction to what Australia were doing to me. I think this means England are going to be absolutely pressuring these forwards. They're going to be going for the scrums, the lineouts. They must have done an awful lot of work on set piece. They're going to be bolstering on the 6-2 for the forwards to try and help them out more and actually try and take over those areas. So I would imagine this game, expect the England game plan to be a lot less kicking, a lot more forward-based penalties coming in. I imagine we'll be seeing no balls getting out of scrums quick. I imagine in terms of line-out, you'll be seeing mainly driving balls. They'll be trying to generate penalties and move up the field. This might be a slightly more boring game. Normally when England go for the 6-2, we tend to see it move towards they're trying to drive for penalties. They'll do an awful lot of kicking to post. They'll kick to the corner if it's within range. They'll just do the driving maul. They'll just sort of settle down and hunker down. Not necessarily the most exciting rugby, but if you want to win a game, sometimes that works. And then finally, the replacement backs, Danny Kerr and Henry Arundel, who doesn't get to start, which is a bit of a shame. I thought he made a huge impact coming on from the bench. So unless they're expecting him to do the same thing in this game, come on in that 75th minute and just score a try, maybe that's what they're thinking. Danny Kerr coming on from the bench will bring that experience. Maybe they'll do some big switch arounds there. Maybe you might see in terms of the actual movement around of the rest of the team, it's a bit hard to judge. I would say if you want to bring Danny Kerr on, they're going to bring him on. They might look to move Farrell to 10, take Marcus Smith off, and then you might have some more experienced halfback partnership set up, and then maybe move someone else into centre. Maybe they'll just bring him on in that second half. I would have thought... Again, I feel this lends itself more towards England are just going to hunker down, hopefully take the lead, and then in that second half you bring on the experienced players like Danny Kerr, higher caps, who just know how to seal a game out. So I'm not expecting here, from just looking at this team, the most expansive game, but then again, you never know. So in terms of an England team, it's a more interesting team. There's obviously been a big tactic change. I think Eddie Jones has got to show a way of changing now. The Barbarians game didn't go the way England probably expected it to, and then that Australia game fell away from them as well. So big tactic change, I don't think is a terrible move. So in terms of a score prediction then, what do we think going into this one? Both teams taking it slightly differently. I'm tempted to still lean more towards Australia. I feel that scoreboard by the end of the game looked like it was a very even game, whereas realistically, if you take away those two tries that just sort of came at the end, it looked like Australia shut off. That scoreline would have looked extremely differently. I felt Australia were commanding for a good chunk of that game, especially in that second half. Even with 14 men, I mean, England were at 14 men for a good while as well. There were 20 minutes of yellow cards in there as well. But I really feel like Australia worked well with it. So I'm going to lean more towards Australia, and I'm going to say Australia to win. I actually think a little bit more, because I'm not sure if England will get those late tries again. I'm going to say Australia to win by 6. I'm going to say they're going to just extend that little bit of a lead out. They'll probably might try and settle themselves down a bit, take those 3 points, hopefully get that kicking up to scratch as well. So you might be seeing a few more penalties in this game, but I'm going to slightly back Australia. But there we have it, guys. That is going to be the preview video for today. Let me know what you think of the teams. Who do you think is going to win? What do you think the final score difference will be? Remember to join the Super Brew that is going on. You need to get those scores added in real quickly because there is a game on the Friday which sort of rushes everything along, especially with me doing videos. Got to try and rush through these as best we can. But make sure you do drop down in the comments who you think will win. Who are you supporting? There's also another fun one. I'd like to see how many subscribers we have from each different international side. So that way you actually get to see what the subscriber base is like. So make sure you drop it down because I really enjoy going through them. And if you've enjoyed this one today, remember to leave this video a like and to keep up to date with all of the latest videos and the match reports going on from these games. Make sure you are subscribed just to keep up to date with all the latest videos as soon as they're out on the channel. I hope you've all enjoyed today, guys, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.